Welcome to Miniature Mashup, the show that's not too judgy about where you get your miniatures. Unless you're twisting pipe cleaners into trolls, then you might have to sit with the poor kids. This is episode 8, wherein we convert a bunch of Marvel's Handful of Heroes toy line into dungeon-dwelling monsters. I'm Fungeon Master Dave, and you might be asking yourself, what are Handful of Heroes? Well, let's take a look at the package. As you can see, there's Kapow in every pack. Kapow being an abbreviation for capowdolene, a highly toxic plastic compound. At just $3 for a pack of 8, Handful of Heroes is much cheaper than his cousin the HeroClix. They also don't need to be stripped of sweatshop paint jobs or oversized bases. If you loved muscle figures as a child, Handful of Heroes will express your impacted nostalgia gland. Especially since Handful of Heroes seems focused on thyroid cases. While Spider-Man and Nightcrawler make an appearance, there are many versions of the Hulk and Hulk-type characters. It's no surprise that a Marvel product is a great source for monsters. Unlike DC Comics, whose characters were descended from the pure escapism of the Depression-era pulp heroes, Marvel Comics started featuring heroes in the 60s after a decade of drive-in sci-fi monster movies. In fact, before creating heroes, Stan Lee was in charge of creating monsters for several of Marvel's monster books. The 60s was the era of Ban the Bomb and Godzilla.
The optimism of the 50s was giving way to the skepticism of the 60s.
Science was seen as a nearly limitless source of mixed blessings, and that's exactly how it was portrayed in the Marvel Universe. The cover of Fantastic Four #1, which is the first of the Marvel hero books, clearly illustrates how much of that sensibility was still prevalent when Marvel moved on to hero titles. Where DC heroes were Promethean Supermen, romantic demigods, or gothic vigilantes, Marvel's heroes were animalistic, brutish, and elemental. DC heroes are the embodiment of human ideals. Marvel heroes are victims of their own powers, longing for their lost humanity and hated by the very people they protect. This is why Marvel characters are so well suited for conversion. Did you know that the infamous Dungeons & Dragons cartoon was produced by Marvel Animation Studios? Another fun fact, many of D&D's illustrators also worked for Marvel Comics. Enough history, let's get on with today's project. First, let's make a plan, because crafting without a plan often leads to wasted time and materials. I'll be converting the following 7 characters. The Thing from the Fantastic Four, he's going to be a clay golem. Onslaught from the Dark Side of Professor X is going to be an iron golem. I'm doing 2 different Hulks. One will be a Neanderthal and the other is sort of royal champion. Bi-Beast will be some sort of generic mutant monster or demon. You can never have enough of those as a DM. We have Zax, an energy monster who will be turning into a fire elemental. And lastly, Maestro here will become a barbarian. Now, before we do any painting at all, I do have a little conversion work to do. I'm not going to show all of it because it mostly just involves chopping plastic with old wire cutters and hot gluing things back together, but I'll give you the rundown. Maestro needs a weapon and a shield. The weapon is stolen from a HeroQuest goblin. The shield is a craft bead from Michaels with a layer of foam behind it to make it wider and thicker. I'll also be doing a head swap with the Thing, as he's too recognizable otherwise. He'll be getting an orc's head, and I'll also be covering up the Fantastic Four belt buckle he's got with a plastic gem. Lastly, I'll be swapping one of the Hulk's heads with a Brentonian Knight's head. I spray primed all of these minis in flat black, and that was a mistake for the fire elemental. You don't want to use black primer. It made it very tough to apply a yellow base coat, and it took way too many coats to get it right. It was a waste of time and energy. Once your primer dries and you're sure you have a nice even coating, you can begin painting. Let's start with Onslaught, who is probably the easiest one. We're just going to dry brush mithril silver on him and a nice even coat. It's okay if he comes out a little brighter than what you're seeing here on the camera. It just means you're using too much paint. Well, that is quite a passable iron golem, is it not? Let's do our clay golem next. I'm going to apply brown to this miniature. We're not going to full-on dry brush this, but we don't want to get a lot of paint, and we don't want thin paint filling in the cracks either. A little bit on the very top of the figure is okay if it fills in there, but other than that, we want to leave the black visible. Now we're just going to add white to our brown and dry brush this lighter brown onto all the raised surfaces that'll be getting hit by light. You have to imagine a light shining down on the mini, and where that light would be, we're going to dry brush there. Then we're going to take an even lighter brown and only dry brush the very highest areas. Enhancing light and shadow is what it's all about with this miniature. We're going to use the same principle with Beast, but we're going to use shades of gray instead of shades of brown. For his eyes, I carefully apply 4 white dots, and then top them with 4 red dots for a truly creepy effect. I then use dark green on his nails and light green to highlight them. Maestro is going to get a brown coat all over, with the exception of his axe head and shield. We're going to dry brush a lighter brown onto his legs, his axe handle, and his boots. We're going to dry brush flesh tone onto his skin. He's got a Celtic look, so I'm going to give him red hair and a green kilt and armbands. I highlight the hair with orange and the green cloth with lighter green. I carefully add white to the teeth and eyes. I paint on eyebrows and a couple of simple tribal tattoos on the chest. Not a bad barbarian. We're going to do much the same with the 2 other Hulks. It's going to start with a brown coat all over. We're just going to add gray highlights to the hair and to his loincloth. Light brown highlights to the club. And then we're going to add, very carefully, some white to the teeth and eyes. We're going to add a red flush to his cheeks and forehead. I also did this with the Celtic barbarian we just finished up. And Zax is going to get orange dry brushed over a base yellow coat, and then red dry brushed on top of the orange. It's really simple. Next, we're going to need to cut out our bases. I used to buy bases all the time, but for plastic miniatures, there's really no need. A nice thick cardboard is free and will work just as well. Better if you consider how light it is to travel with. I measure in 2 inches from the edge, and then I split that again, so we get an inch division. Then I measure and cut out some 2-inch increments, and some 1-inch increments as well. We hot glue the minis onto the bases, then we flock the bases as we did in episode 6. I'm going to apply a watered down craft glue onto the cardboard, careful to just get it on the base and not the miniatures. Don't forget to go around the edges. You want to conceal the fact that this is cardboard. Then we dip it into our green tea flock, which not only looks good, but smells great. Boy, a handful of Heroes miniatures, you don't have to just paint them up straight into monsters. They're a good source of parts, too. This Dreamblade figure is very cool. I liked him a lot. Now, I've painted him a bit, but he also had cleavers for hands, unfortunately. Now, I've replaced them with a pair of Beast hands, which are still a little odd, but certainly look far more normal than cleavers and make him a much more universal sort of character. The Handful of Heroes Dr. Octopus provided the eye stalks for this homemade beholder. And lastly, let's take a look at our finished products.